Yes, Prabhu. So we can start recording and we can.
Okay, I'll go back to what I was telling you. So basically, when we came here,
Yes, Prabhu.
I mean, how we started getting to grazing as such.
Yes.
So what happened is that when we first
Yeah.
when we first came here, we built some goshalas. The first goshalas that we had were, and we were grazing the cows daily.
Yeah.
And we would take them to the village, and we would bring them back in the evening, and then water them, and then feed them in the goshalas, or what do you call them, the sheds or barns.
Yes,
sir. And then after doing that, we would again have to buy fodder, feeds, and again feed them. So that was coming to, as I said, about 7 to 9 lakhs for 30-40 cows annually.
Okay.
And in spite of doing all that, whatever we could, but tying the cows at night back into the barn, into their sheds, and doing all that, the cows were getting tick infested. A lot of ticks on the cows. And we were trying all kinds of stuff like tobacco and other things, and without any chemicals, synthetic chemicals. But we were trying all kinds of stuff. It was not working out. Sometimes it would go down, sometimes it comes, like we'd burn, we would use blow torches to burn the things, because the eggs were there in the goshala.
Yes.
So the first goshala was basically a bamboo structure, and then our house got burnt. So they decided that if the goshala by any chance catches fire, where will the cows run? Because they are all tied. So he says, if you have your house is getting burnt and you want to run away, and you want to build a new structure, so then you have to build a new structure for the cows. We did that too. We built a big structure with a lot of cost. And even after doing that, we still were having a lot of problems with the ticks. Normally, in these areas, the local people, they don't have so much tick problem in the rainy season. But our case, it was not going down at all. The ticks were increasing more and more. And then we were burning, and we were spraying tobacco and different things that we could spray to bring it down. But again, it would come back. And that is the time when Dr. Sri Kumar and Dr. Sri Kala, they came. And I told them that our biggest problem right now is that we have so many ticks. So then they told us, because we knew that the ticks were in the goshala. We knew it. I said we have to remove it or something like that. That's the main issue. But we are not confident to leave the cows outside, because the way that normally all people do around is that they all keep the cows inside and then there are also tigers in this area. So when Dr. Sri Kumar and Dr. Sri Kala came, especially Dr. Sri Kumar, he said, let's keep the cows outside. You were saying that the ticks are inside the goshala, so let's keep them outside. And by the time we just finished making a fence, so we started keeping the cows outside, and immediately the tick count came down.
Okay.
Immediately the ticks came down. So we said, it was a kind of a revelation for us that the cows can be free from ticks. So that's the first time we started saying, let's keep the cows on the land or away from fixed up places. And then as we started doing that, then our cost of labor came down, because we previously needed about 5 people to clean up the goshala every day, clean the cow dung, hose it up, clean it, wash it, and the cows would have to sit on their same dung and urine every day, and they don't like it anyways. And they couldn't move because they were tied to two sides like this, and then we had to feed them inside. So we saved labor, we saved time by doing that. So that was the first time that we said, okay, this is going to make some sense for us. So then we started looking around for how can we do things better. How can we maybe keep the cows more and more outside. So then came up the idea that, then we thought about the idea of how to bring down the cost of fodder, because we were spending about 700,000 to 900,000 rupees annually just buying fodder and feeds. So then the concept came that if you give the cows 2 acres of land per cow, and you can just leave them there and then they'll feed themselves.
Yes.
So that's the second thing that happened. When we looked at that, and it was called, it's called continuous grazing in one sense. But then as we're looking into the pros and cons of continuous grazing, we found out that continuous grazing is actually not beneficial as beneficial for the cows and for the land and everything else. Because continuous grazing takes almost 30 years for the land to develop and give it, and it also lands in the overgrazing of certain species of grass which the cows prefer, and they will generally allows the non-preferred grasses to grow. So eventually on a continuous grazing you can even have a pasture which is filled with grass which is not preferred by the cows to graze, because they are overgrazing the preferred grasses. So that's what we found out, and then we said, well, then what can we do? So then we thought about some other ways. Then we landed up with this whole thing of what do you call it? Planned grazing or mob grazing, whatever you call it. It's moving.
Patch based.
No, from continuous grazing to paddock grazing, paddocks. Then from paddock grazing we came to the point of high stock density, means you put a lot of cows in a small area for a short time, then you move the cows.
Okay.
So that is what took us to Alan Savory.
Yes.
And then we found out that you can actually do such things, and we started doing some of those things, or started planning to do that. So with that idea we started fencing this, some part of the land that we have, about 150 acres or so we fenced last year. And this is the first season that we are, means the rainy season and the summer and the spring and everything. So we're running into the first summer now after fencing this property. So it's already been about 5 to 6 months. We've not actually been able to do the the planned grazing or the grazing animals in short time in small places, and keep moving the beef because our infrastructure is not yet together.
Yeah.
But it definitely gives good results, and we're already seeing that. And we already also seeing that it really works, because it creates soil. The ground. Let's talk about a little science now.
Yes.
What happens is that any plants to grow require a temperature of 20 to 30 degrees centigrade. So within that temperature, plants do very well.
Anywhere?
Yeah, more or less everywhere. Just like the same temperature that we like to work in.
Correct.
20 to 30 degrees. So what happens is that when the land is bare like this, brown, and there's no vegetation, no cover on it, when the hot sun comes, especially in these areas, in tropical areas like India, and that we are down south, the land starts heating up, and you will notice that actually the soil becomes as hot as, say, 50 to 60 degrees centigrade on a midday. And when temperatures go up that much, above 30 degrees, the soil moisture is all gone from the soil. There's no moisture left in the soil. And once the moisture leaves the soil, there is no biological activity in the soil. So the temperature has to remain within 30. And the only way you can actually keep the soil temperatures below 30 or around 30 is by a cover. You have to have a cover on the soil. And to get cover on the soil, and now the only way is to lay down the grass, or what the cows don't eat. Like the cows eat certain things and they don't eat certain things. So when they don't eat what they don't eat, they lay it down on the ground.
Yeah.
So it's mulch for us. So we've tried to do that for some areas. In some areas it's working out well. But since our infrastructure is still not ready, we're not still ready to do all that, and our manpower is a little down. This year is the first year, and we're trying to work it out. So now, now what happens is that once the mulch is there on the ground, we can, if we go that side where we've done such work a little bit, you can see that the grass is sprouting back, flushing back.
Okay.
Green grass is flushing back from that soil. So any temperature, once the temperature crosses 30, and between 30 and 35 degrees, I think, the moisture that remains in the soil is only about 15%.
Okay.
And below 30, the more moisture it retains. And you have a mulch, it retains more moisture. So that is how the soil becomes rich. And basically our whole civilization is dependent on the topsoil. This 4, 5, 6 inches of the humus rich soil, which is actually the soil which is the richest part. It is full of nutrients and there is a lot of biological activity, and nutrients are available for the plants to grow. So what happens is that when you expose the soil to the hot sun, you're literally frying it out.
Yep.
So there's no biological activity. If there's no biological activity, there's no nutrient cycling. If there's no nutrient cycling, the soil is poor. And the loose soil exposed to the hot sun and the wind starts eroding. Then next comes the rainy season, it erodes it further. So practically you're devoid of your nutrients in the soil. So what you're trying to actually farm on is the lower layers of the soil which are actually nutrient poor. And therefore, as every year you lose, now for the present statistics is that I think for every ton of food that the humans are producing on this earth or doing by agriculture, we are losing 7 to 10 tons of soil. So what we are actually farming is not the topsoil, but we are farming on the subsoil. And because the subsoil is poor in nutrient, so you're having to put huge amounts of inputs into the soil to grow basic food. And every year the struggle is only increasing. And you can talk to any farmer, he says that growing is becoming more and more difficult. It's more and more erratic. And secondly, without the topsoil and the humus and the carbon content in the soil does not retain water. Then you have no retention of water, and then you expose the soil to this hot sun, it's devoid of all humidity. So what you have is a perfect chemistry for Kali Yuga to progress. And then in that chemistry, you have poverty. Basic poverty is a poverty of nutrients. When the land is poor, then the struggle for existence increases. And then when struggle for existence increases, then you start doing all kinds of things to basically survive. Because the basic instinct, the first instinct of any living being is survival is his first instinct. It wants to survive somehow. Yeah. So what we have is a perfect chemistry for Kali Yuga. So then when the soil is eroding and it's not giving enough to us, then we start slowly migrating or looking for some other professions to, add to our income. So we start doing some extra work here and there. And then gradually we move to cities in the non-growing season. And then slowly we start living in the cities. And then cities, once you live in the cities, then a lot of other things come. It is an unsustainable way to live because cities don't produce anything. And then another thing that happens is that because the men are naturally stronger and have more resilience and they can go out, the people who are actually face the brunt of all this degradation and are actually become abused because of the poor soil and the poor environment that they're creating, women and children. Yes. So women and children get exploited as a result of this. So they start working harder. The women have to start working harder. The children have to go out working harder. And the men, of course, are working hard. Yeah. So that's what goes on, because it's all because the soil is unprotected.
So in that context, one question to you, Prabhu. So it is really so important to return to what is called traditional occupation? If so, why?
No, first let us understand traditional occupation. Most important is first let's understand that we have to graze the cows.
Okay.
Until unless this land is not being grazed by cows, as human beings, we can domesticate few animals. We can domesticate cows, we can domesticate sheep, we can domesticate goats, we can domesticate horses, donkeys. I think that's about it. Maybe in some places some llamas and this and that, a few other odd animals are there. Of all of them, the one that is most useful for us from an all-round point of view is the cow. And we have buffaloes, but buffaloes are very difficult to keep in places which are hot and don't have enough water, because they're water buffaloes after all. They need water. So in dry and arid areas, which is more than 2/3 of the world, you actually can't keep buffaloes. And if you do, you'll have to get a lot of water to keep them, because they love to just roll in water. And then if you want to keep sheep, sheep gives little milk, but it's not good for traction or drought activities. You cannot pull carts with sheep. You don't hear of that. It may be able to be, but I don't know. It's not very good. For other drought animals, there are donkeys and horses, but they don't give their milk. I mean, milk is not so useful for us.
Yeah.
And so here we have a very ideal combination where we have the cows, which give sufficient milk, and which you can take milk. I'm not saying that we should take milk anyhow, but cows, milk is one thing, but the other thing is that we also get animals for traction. So without petroleum, now 1 liter of petroleum actually does the work of 87 people. But if you don't have petroleum, then what will you live off? Where will you get your traction power from? Powers to lift anything, to move anything, to grind anything. All that power you will have to depend on someone else. You can get horses, but horses, again, you don't get milk. And the horse dung is not as potent and useful and purifying as cows. And cows are very easy to keep. Horses need a lot of maintenance. You've got to massage the horse, especially the ones that you're riding, that you use for riding. They need massage. They need good maintenance. Very, very, very sensitive animals. Very intelligent, very good animals. But for traction is good. But for milk and milk products, you won't get them again. So, again, traditionally also you see the Indian culture keeps cows in the house. It's purifying. You can apply cow dung on the floors. Cow urine is drunk. The cow urine is used for worship. It is said in Hari Bhakti Vilas that if you wipe the temple of the Lord with cow dung every day, smear it on the floor, you go back home back to Vaikuntha. So these are things that are given to us there. So therefore, it's a part of our culture to keep cows. The dung of the sheep and the cattle are also useful, but you can't collect their urine. It's very little, and you can't do much with them, and then you don't have traction. And secondly, a meat-eating population is again a drain for the soil, because the amount of meat that you will get from consuming the meat of the animals vis-a-vis the production that you can get from the soil is much higher. So again, a population that is for a major part of the world, and which is basically the Brahminical culture, is that you leave enough for the soil, you leave enough for everyone else. Sarva Sukhino Bhavantu, Vasudeva Kutumbakam, that the whole earth belongs, it's all ours. We are a part of this whole large family. But the soil is on which we all live off. And the cows have sufficient weight that is required to disturb the soil, to graze the soil, to trample the soil, to trample the organic matter that is there, and put it back. And the microorganisms in the cow are extremely useful and helpful for human beings. So all this put together, if you have all these domesticated animals, it looks more and more obvious to us, at least from a practical point of view, because it's easier to keep cows, maintain cows. You can get much more out of cows than from any other animal. So grazing, therefore, but cows cannot be kept in like we have in the Western dairy system. You keep them in a barn tied up or whatever, and feed them, forage that you keep stored and then feed them. No, by grazing the cows actually is the land gets fed, the recycling takes place, the topsoil gets developed, the soil is retained, the water holding capacity of the soil increases, the organic matter in the soil increases. If you see, most of the land that we have today has the organic content, the carbon content in the soil is 0.001 or 0.01 or something like that, which is minimal, less than 1% of the soil organic matter. And if you have such low organic soil matter, then where is the question of doing organic farming? If you have 1%, organic matter in your soil, then the soil can hold, I think, something like 45,000 gallons of water per acre.
Just 1% of carbon.
Yeah. And if you can increase it to say 88% of organic matter in your soil can store 85,000 gallons of water per acre. That means a 5-inch rainfall can be completely absorbed by this. And that will solve your drought problems, your flooding problems, your loss of nutrients, and then loss of livelihoods, which comes from loss of nutrients. So all of it comes just by keeping cows and grazing cows in that manner, in a manner that is. So that is what Krishna did. I mean, he grazed cows.
Yeah.
And he had 12 forests. So they are big forests, and there are 12 major forests, and out of that there were 108 minor forests. So you go grazing from one place to another place. I guess I would say the major and minor the difference would be from the ones that are probably more which would graze more. I mean, which would give you more forage. I mean, which would give you more grass to graze. That probably is a major forest, and minor forests that maybe it will dry up in some season or may not have enough forage for the cows. So the thing is that we have to see that by grazing cows, you're not just grazing cows, you're feeding the soil, you're making the nutrients, because the microorganisms from the cow dung and the cow urine, actually even more important than the cow dung is to have the cow urine on the soil. So the cow urine is the one which actually breaks down the lignin, the cellulose. When it actually, most plants have cellulose, growing plants are cellulosic in nature, and cows love to eat the cellulose, and the cellulose is what is what they digest mainly. And what happens next is that when it hardens up, it becomes lignin, and lignin is tough to break down. Even fungus needs to get into it to break it down. So the fungus, to infect and break down the lignin, the cow urine is very important to get soaked in the soil. So anyway, first coming back again to the breaking down of the organic matter that is there in the soil. So once the organic matter starts breaking down with the cow urine and the cow dung, which provides an excellent material for the fungus to infect, the soil and the organic material that is there has to break down as soon as possible, so those nutrients that are locked in it gets back to the soil and the growing plants get it. If that process is delayed, then again the soil, we who live off the soil, we become nutrient starved. Why do we become nutrient starved? Because the plant doesn't have enough nutrients to provide us. It will come, but it takes a longer time. But as soon as it takes longer time, it again increases our struggle of existence. So the whole process needs to be hastened. And the process of hastening the nutrient cycling back into the soil is the cow urine and the cow dung, the trampling of the cows with the hooves and breaking down the organic matter, laying it on the ground and making sure that the land is covered so that the moisture is retained. And once the moisture is retained, the fungal infection takes place, it starts breaking down the organic matter. The lower levels of the soil where the organic matter is actually older material that is there, that is slightly devoid of oxygen, so therefore fungal infection starts better there. And it's this fungal infection that actually breaks down the nutrients and also provides mycorrhiza. Mycorrhiza is fungal association with all roots. That actually, the roots have a little limited capacity to which it grows, but to increase the capacity to which the roots can absorb material is the fungal hyphae that spreads and infects and has a symbiotic relationship with the roots. All that is possible only and only when there is fungal breakdown of organic matter in the soil. And all that happens when you have the cows trampling the soil, laying the organic matter, breaking it down, giving their urine, putting their dung, and moving away from that place. And resting the land for at least in a growing season for 6 weeks, and in a non-growing season at least for 90 days. So that what actually makes the soil. Nutrient cycling makes the soil, makes the topsoil, makes the humus. And if that is missing, the nutrient cycling is reduced, then our struggle for existence in place. But what we are doing by agriculture is returning nutrients to the soil so that we can grow some crops for us. If the nutrient cycling is slow, then the whole society becomes slow. So that is again another perfect chemistry for Kali Yuga. Then struggle for existence increases. Prayana alpa ayusha kalevasman yuga jana manda sumanda matayo manda bhagyahi padma. So it's all misguided Kali Yuga by doing things in such a terrible manner. So cows have to go back to the land. It has to be grazed. And by grazing the cows and then bringing them back again, not immediately, overgrazing the land again will destroy the land. It destroys, not destroys it, but it brings down the nutrient cycling, it destroys the growing phase of the soil and the regeneration of the soil, and they also get less crop, food to eat, if the cows are brought back into the same land again and again. So what we need to understand is grazing itself is a whole huge thing that has to be done properly if our society has to survive. And if our society has to survive and to graze and to live peacefully without a struggle, because as we can see today, city life is a huge struggle. There's a lot of struggle in the city to basically get our basic nutrients to survive. Why are we working so hard in the city? So that we can get some nutrients to survive. We can get food to eat. We have a place to sleep. We have a place to raise our families, educate them. So all this is a part of the system that is created. But all this is not possible if you don't have cows grazing on the land. So the cows have to get to the land, they have to graze and then systematically move on. And that, with that kind of a rich soil that you have, you will get water. And another thing that cows can also do is to mitigate climate change. And one of the main reasons of climate change is high temperatures. Yeah. And what is high temperature? Again, as I mentioned before, if the soil is not covered and the sun heats up the soil directly, the temperatures go up to 50 to 60 degrees. Whereas if you have the soil covered, there is more water in the soil, and the soil also doesn't heat up so much. You can actually experience it. You go down to a soil which has got proper mulch and try to measure the temperature down in the soil, you'll see it's not more than 32 degrees maximum, I would say.
Yes. Thank you.
And also, another thing is that in colder climates, where climate is cold, you will see that the organic matter is also laid down by the cows when they're grazing. Some people say that you will not need cows in the colder season, not even colder areas. Even colder areas need the cows. And what happens there, they have a longer period in which the organic matter takes time to break down.
Correct.
But when that takes place, actually the heap of organic matter in the colder areas becomes larger because the period of time that it takes to break down longer. So you will actually notice if you go down in a cold place, like the place I came from, Geelong, the lower layers are actually rotting, and there's fungal infection and all that going on, and that is actually producing heat from the land. So in a cold place, the lower area is actually warm because of the fungus breaking down and that fermentation and all that is going on. It's actually breaking down. It's making the place warmer in the winters in those places. And here in these places which are hot, it makes the place cooler because there's soil, there's water that is retained. So the first point is grazing. Yes. We need to graze. And then with grazing, the other things will come. And most of the land we don't need to actually do so much of agriculture. If the soil is rich and is full of nutrients, we don't need to do such extensive agriculture. And anyway today, most of the land in the world is being farmed not to feed human beings. It is being farmed to feed animals that we eat. So that the animals will take care of it. You just leave the animals on the land. Don't have to, and you'll get your nutrients what you want. You don't need to eat meat. You can get richer, far richer materials that you can eat from for the plants that you can get in fruits. Human beings actually love eating fruits.
Yes, thank you. So again, coming back to traditional occupation. So not that everyone can keep cows, and this one everyone can keep cows, or may not be affordable to keep cows. No.
Actually, see, let's talk about.
Other comments
let's understand tradition. See, tradition means first and foremost. Let's come to the point of Kshatriyas. Okay, Kshatriyas means, if you understand it properly, Kshatriyas are the kings of kingly. You cannot be a king, okay, if you don't have land.
Yeah.
So a king first has land. He's a land-based person.
Yeah.
And administration and management is land management and land administration. So he is basically managing land. He owns land. He owns the land and he manages the land. That's his first occupation. And to manage land, you cannot manage big tracts of land without animals, without cows. And we've trying it, it's not working, it's desertifying, it's breaking down, we're making deserts out of it, or we're making it arid, or whatever else we are doing out of it. And now we are trying, industry on the same land. It's not working out. The water is not there. Industries also will not survive because there's no water there. So the first and foremost thing that the king or Kshatriya, who owns the land, the administrative head of a society is the Kshatriya, he has to own land and he has to manage land. That is first and foremost occupation. Whether you do it traditionally or you do it now, no one can survive. The present situation, can we provide employment to all the people that are coming up for employment through industries and enterprises of industries or factories and mills, etc. No, we cannot provide employment and food and nutrition to all the people that are coming up. It's not possible. It's just not possible. The only way is to properly manage the resource that you have. And the most important renewable resource that we have is the soil. All other resources that we have are non-renewable. Whether you take lime, whether you take rocks, whether you take petroleum, you take any mineral, it's non-renewable. The only truly renewable resource we have is the topsoil. So as a Kshatriya, he has to first learn that he has to first and foremost renew the soil. The only renewable resource is the soil. And only on the basis of that renewable resource of soil can a Kshatriya actually manage his land. Okay? In fact, trees, the old trees that we had, teak and rosewood and other trees, that sal, other trees that are, have lasted longer than steel. Lasted longer. The ships which made with teak last 50 years. So, actually the truly and the most renewable resource we have is the soil. And that is the first thing the Kshatriya needs to learn what to do, how to manage soil. And to manage soil, you cannot do it without animals and cows. Most importantly, cows, because cows are domesticated. Other animals are also required because you cannot herd the wild animals. It's very difficult to herd wild animals. You can't do that. Wild animals are wild. So only human beings, if they have to herd and manage the land that they have or which they are looking after, they have to use cows or one of those livestock. And for us, for our culture and for the for human culture, basically, what we need is cows for everything else. So traditional is first, and then if you're talking about cows and managing agriculture, then the next thing comes that you need to have Vaishyas doing it.
Other occupations.
Yeah. And then, so everything has to be land-based. Managing the land and its resources. So
in that context, one more added question, Prabhu. So why is it said that Varnasrama culture is primarily an agrarian-based culture and lifestyle?
I think that's what I've just explained.
Yes.
That agrarian lifestyle, soil-based, land-based culture.
Yeah.
No society can survive without being land-based, without understanding this truly renewable, sustainable resource that is again and again renewable is the soil. We can only make soil. Okay, all the machines. In fact, I was listening to Alan Savory the other day, and he was saying all the things that we make, we're making it better and better. Like for example, cars, we're making better cars. Missiles, we're making better and better missiles. Computers, we're making better computers. Name it, whatever we are making it better and better, isn't it? But in spite of making things better and better and better, is our water situation getting better? Is our land resources getting better? None of them are getting better. In spite of the fact that technologically we are improving further and further. But what we are degrading is our lifestyle, our society. Everything else is degrading, but we are making better products. We are making much better products than yesterday. But everything else is degrading. The corruption, the violence, the crime, everything else is degrading. The food quality, everything else is degrading. But we are making much better products. So just shows that we cannot manage these resources that we have. We're making better products, but we're not able to manage resources. there is more breakdown, social breakdown, families are breaking down, kids are breaking down, we have more mental problems, everything else, we have more diseases that we are trying to fight. We are trying to remove, it's taken us years and years of struggle to try to say we have removed polio, but we have far more, damaging diseases that are affecting us right now. Ebola, now often there's one more, I forget.
Zika.
Yeah.
Zika, they're promoting Zika.
Yeah, so it's all AIDS and this and that, it's just going on. So we're not able to manage. So first and foremost, all of this comes because the soil is poor. And poor soil can only be managed by cows. And that is the only way that... So a Kshatriya, he manages the water resources and resources, the human resources, so that this program can go on. And that human resource management is basically what he does by getting the Brahmanas, the educated people. That's human resource, I would say, the knowledge resource. And then the cows have to be managed, and the Kshatriya, Vaishyas come in, and all the other physical work that needs to be done and managed so that the land remains renewable, rich, and the main source of our living. Like in the Bhagavatam says, Sarva Kama Dugha Mahi. Sarva Kama, Kama means desires, Dugha means provider. All our desires are fulfilled by Mother Earth.
Yeah.
So Mother Earth is that which we need to... And of the Mother Earth, the top soil is the most important.
Yes.
And that can only come back by grazing. And that's why Krishna, I guess, came to graze cows. And he said, and we worship him as Gopal. We don't, our main, Krishna's most attractive pastimes are the pastimes in Vrindavan when he goes out grazing with the cows and does whatever else he does. So that's the most important resource, important thing that we have to do. And then Balaram is there, he has a plow. And with minimal activity, you do your agriculture, or what do you need to grow. So that's a different aspect altogether, growing, because you won't hear Krishna and Balaram actually doing a lot of farming. They're mainly grazing cows and then eating fruits from the trees and all that. That comes to a different aspect of thing, which is called the annuals versus the perennials. So human society actually needs to live more off the perennial crops and fruits and trees, etc., rather than the annuals. Because annuals means constantly disturbing the soil. And as you constantly disturb the soil, you're eroding it, you're disturbing it, you are losing your resources. So we need to move more to a perennial culture rather than an annual culture. So that's where this thing. So Kshatriya and the Brahmanas, they actually help the society to understand all these things. The Brahmanas give them the idea of how to manage the world and the resources and your life. And the Kshatriyas help actually do the executive work of it. That's part of the whole situation.
So, yeah.
It has to be land-based, it has to be agrarian, it has to be... I wouldn't use the word agrarian, I would say land-based.
Land-based. So, you mentioned like Kshatriya has to get Brahmanas and get education to the other category of people. So, in this context, like at least within ISKCON society, there is a question. Sorry to interrupt. I think we have 3 or 4 minutes memory left, bro. I'm sorry for that. Where should ISKCON focus its attention as far as education is concerned?
Okay, education. See, education. The education that we are providing right now is basically so that the kids can. All that we are bothered about is they will get a jobs at the end of the education. And the jobs will make them more and more insecure. They'll make them more and more difficult for them to survive. They'll be more and more exposed to the worldly pressures, and they will be abused because of that. So it's not very natural. Basically, modern education, I'd say in short, has done the following things to us. It's taken our children away from our language, from their language. It's taken the children away from their family. It's taken the children away from the occupations of their father and mother. It takes them away from their religion. It takes them away from their community. It takes them away from their land and their nation. It makes them foreigners in their own land. And they have practically no skills of life. They only have skills to live in an industrial society using and producing industrial products. And industry and industrial products are based on finite resources, not infinite, renewable, sustainable resources. And if they're going to do that, education to their children, they are putting their children's career and their lives in peril. They are going to make them be always unsustainable, fearful. So let us come back to understanding one thing. The only truly renewable resource that we have is the soil, on a material level, to survive in this world. And how to do that is education. Because if that is what you have to survive on, you have to learn how to renew and live off a renewable resource, or make a renewable resource. That is the soil. That is sustainable. And that is sustainable education. Other than that, they'll have to sell. You have to. Now, in most cities, it's not possible for a husband alone to earn. You have to have both husband and wife to earn. Or the husband has to work, 2 jobs, or maybe double the amount and try to get some money, because it's so difficult for them to.
That's right.
So then, if you're letting women out of the house, then what is this education that you're giving to? So it's the struggle for existence increases. The only way is the soil. We have no other resource. The world has no other resource, renewable resource, other than the soil. And to keep the resource going, you need cows. There is no way out. We have nothing in this society. And if you don't understand this, this I'm telling you after 2 postgraduate degrees myself, after being an entrepreneur myself, and doing whatever things I had done, I finally come up to seeing that there is no renewable resource we have other than the soil. The soil is the only truly renewable resource on which you can safely depend on life after life, generation after generation. And it can provide more and more to a lot of people. It's the only truly renewable resource we have. Cities are becoming more and more difficult. There's an increasing problem with water, increasing problem for housing, there's increasing problem to get jobs, increasing problem for security, there's increasing violence, rates of inflation are going up, prices of food is going up. So there is need. And if you're thinking that we're going to train our children in an urban way, in an urban setup, to live in an urban life, you are just making their lives more miserable.
So you want to say, particularly based on the question, so ISKCON should focus on this kind of education when it comes to education?
I wouldn't say only ISKCON, the whole world has to refocus on education that is sustainable. It's not just ISKCON or world. It's physically, you have to be sustainable. If you're not sustainable, then what is spirituality? There's one lecture by Srila Prabhupada, I think it's first canto 7th chapter, verse number 43, if I'm not mistaken, or 40 or 43, must be 40, 43, one of them. At the end of the lecture, Prabhupada says, if you're not peaceful, then how can you practice spiritual life? So the first and foremost thing is to be peaceful. And if you have one exam or to be another exam and competition, where are you being peaceful to be spiritual?
Yeah.
You have, there's competition to get into the bus, there's competition to get off the bus, there's competition to get a job, competition in the job, competition to buy your food, competition to do all these things. If there's so much competition, where are you being peaceful to do practice spiritual? There is no spirituality if there is so much competition. So it has to be a competition. And Prabhupada says, first canto, I think, first chapter, verse number 2, he says that our society is supposed to be, devotees want to make a competition in this society.
Any key points for that you would like to mention, that any raw land whoever takes, what are the primary 5 or 6 dimensions one should look at it?
Well, the first 2 things, fence the property.
Yeah.
Make sure your property is fenced, number 1. Number 2, conserve the soil. Don't lose your soil on your property, either through wind or by air. And the next is conserve water in the property. You should have enough water. To do anything, to make a land productive, the land needs water. It needs fertile soil. That's all it needs. So we need to make sure we have that. Okay. And don't be afraid to do experiments. But don't make it too expensive. Don't make your experiments too expensive. Soil, if it is, you conserve it. And if you plant some seed that doesn't come, don't worry, plant it again. After 3 or 4 attempts, it will start growing. So it's nothing like, there is, actually growing doesn't require, it's not like, what do you call it? Space technology of making a rocket. It's not rocket technology, it's very simple. Yes. Any seed you put, it needs a climate, it needs a temperature, it needs a moisture content in which it grows. And any soil in the world can grow. There's no soil which cannot grow.
Yeah.
Any soil will grow something on it. And you just have to make sure that the water is conserved, the soil is conserved, and it is protected.
But there is some speciality about this tropical Indian region and different other regions.
The tropical Indian region is that the nutrient cycling is faster, decomposition rates are faster because of the heat and the humidity being high. So it's a good place where decomposition takes place. But we also do have a good rainy season, good monsoons, so we should make sure that our soil do not erode away, wash away. We should conserve that. And make sure that the soil is covered in these areas because the heat goes up quite high here. We have normal temperatures above 30-40 degrees, isn't it? So when direct sunlight in those kind of conditions, the soil will heat up to about 50 to 60 degrees. And then nothing can grow in it.
And there is difference between the cows from Indian region cows and other region cows. Even the dung and what are the...
No, main problem that you'll get if you don't keep the cows ecologically suited to that area. I wouldn't say the Indian cow also. Like for example, we have Tharparkar cows, which we got here. They are from Jaipur, Rajasthan, Jaisalmer area, Jaipur and Jaisalmer. They're actually not ecologically suited for the Western Ghats, the high rainfall and the stony land that is there. So most of our cows from the Tharparkar breed, which is from Rajasthan, have problems with their legs. Most of them have a problem with their legs. So our point is that whether it is an Indian cow or a cow that is exotic cow that has been introduced into India, if you do that, as soon as you introduce some other variety of cows from some other place to an area which is not ecologically suited to it, you will have problems. So this region, the only cow, the cows that suit their bodily build up, the nutrient requirement, because these are again high rainfall areas, high slopes. So there's a lot of drainage of nutrients from this place going down. So they have a growing period, cows have a growing period, say about 7 to 8 months is their initial period of growth. In that area they need high nutrients to grow up. In 6 months they grow up from 3 or 4 kilos to 200 kilos.
6 months.
Yeah, 6 to 7 months. So that means in that period they need that nutrition of that type. Then only they can grow up to that level. So if that is not going to be available in the local vegetation here, then again it's ecologically not suited for this area. In the same way, if you introduce exotic cows, which are actually suited for the western or the temperate climate of the Western Hemisphere, then obviously again you're introducing something which is unsuitable for this area. So then if you're a farmer and you're keeping cow of that type, then you have to spend a lot of money to feed that cow and try to grow it up. And it's going to be very taxing and time-consuming, nutrient-consuming, money-consuming affair. So if you have something which is suited to that area, then it is the best. So here the bone structure of the cows is small, because that's what they will get in the 6-7 months of growing period, initial growing time of their life. That is what they will grow up to. So if you allow that to happen, then that is what, because whatever vegetation is there, the kind of crops that we get, that's what they will grow up to. So we need to understand those things. Similarly, growing trees and plants in this area also. We need to grow things which are ecologically suited for that area. Not just because everyone is growing it, let us also grow. What is ecologically more suited for this area? For example, by growing crops which are exotic to this area, we'll end up getting nutrients, I mean the crops that we get will have lesser nutrient content in it than it should. Whereas things that will naturally grow here, like finger millet, ragi that will grow here, is naturally grows here, so it will be of very high nutrient content. Whereas the same plant you grow somewhere else, you may get the ragi, but you may not get the same amount of nutrient content that you have. So now the nutrient content in apples, at least in America, that's what the statistics is it's only 20% of what it used to be 50 years ago. So you need to eat 5 apples a day.
Apple a day, 5 apples a day.
5 apples a day keeps the doctor away.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, bro.
Hare
Hare Krishna.